Hello and welcome to North 100, a Canadian Highlander and apparently set review podcast. I'm Serge. Joining me today, I have a Wheeler.
Hello.
And a Jer.
Hello.
A reminder that this podcast is brought to you by you with your support at the Patreon over at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Welcome to our Modern Horizons 2 set review. This is part 2 where we're going to be covering red and green cards. Reminder that our set reviews are not exhaustive. Our goal here is not to cover every single card, only the cards that we think are relevant to the format. And, if it's relevant in not our format, that's great. Maybe we'll talk about it a bit, but that's not really the focus. So yeah, we're not going to cover every card, and that's okay. I suppose let's jump right on into it. And the first card today is Bloodbraid Marauder. This is a 2-mana 3/1 human berserker for 1 in a red. It can't block, and it has Delirium, which means this spell has Cascade as long as there are 4 or more cards amongst card types in your graveyard. Wheeler, what do you think?
Serge, I'm never blocking. I never have and I never will.
Why start now?
Yeah, exactly. So that line of text is not super relevant. I mean, it is, but it's not in the same way. The most relevant part is that 1 toughness on a creature, especially in a red 2-drop, is it's not great, not terrible, frankly. And especially with a bunch of mana dorks running around, tokens, all that jazz, like if this can't readily attack into those, it feels pretty bad. And then the other is Delirium. It's not as easy of an ability to get going as you'd think, or well, you'd hope. So it's kind of appealing to want to be able to play this card, because hey, who doesn't like a free Goblin Guide or Jackal Pup? But at the same time, like red has gotten some pretty good 2-drops recently. And so I don't know, even if getting Delirium going in those kind of decks isn't that difficult, shout out to Seal of Fire, Sulfuric Vortex, and the whole gang. I just don't know if you need it. And it's a really cool card. I mean, that's basically everything for the set, but I don't know if this one's exactly winning it for me.
Fair enough. All right, let's move on to Breya's Apprentice. This is a 3-mana 2/3 artifact creature human artificer for 2 in a red, and it says when it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 Thopter artifact creature token with flying. Tap and sack an artifact to choose one. Exile the top card of your library until end of your next turn. You may play that card end of your next turn. Oh, it's a different templating. Most of them just say end of turn, but this gives you that little extra window. Also, play that card means you can play lands as opposed to templating that says cast. And anyways, I digress. The second line, or the second ability, is target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. I'm going to throw this one to me, and I'm looking at this immediately for my aggressive artifact decks. Does this take the place of like Pia, Nalar, or Thopter Engineer? It's an artifact which is a pro, but the red pip does mean you can't just cast it for free off Workshop, which makes it a little bit more restrictive. I think this is very cool, but I don't think it's quite good enough. I think exactly what you're talking about. The fact that you have to tap to activate the ability means this is way more restrictive as well. Normally, what you want to do is turn all of your creatures sideways, keep your mana open, and then threaten a trick with an extra math, and not being able to attack with this definitely limits those options.
Serge, may I? Two things. One, ¿por qué no los dos? Why not both? Why not play both PNLR and this card?
And Thopter Engineer.
The main reason being, okay, I have to dive into this. This is a deep dive. A lot of the fast mana that you get in this format right now is colorless, because Moxen are pointed. And when you're playing primarily an artifact deck, what you're trying to do is you're trying to accelerate and dump your hand as quickly as possible. So you want to keep your pip costs as low as possible, which means the cards that you choose to play with mana pips need to be as high impact as possible. And I don't think that this is that card.
Okay.
If you disagree, by all means, please tell me.
I do, and I'm a little, I'm honestly a little flabbergasted even. I think this card is extremely good.
Yeah, I think that first option is exactly what the decks.
It gives you, I guess it gives you more gas.
Like I feel you absolutely on the. There's nothing worse than you're staying at this Mishra's workshop and you see some grumpy old man like sigh that's like, give me a blue mana, and you're like, I don't have it. It's the worst. But like I think we're getting to the point where single pipped cards A-okay. This isn't Breya proper, so there's not 4 costs. 4 different colors. colors. But like, I think this card's a slam dunk in artifact decks. I'm definitely playing it in medium red too. And like Pianalar was like a slow burn for the red-green mid-range decks in the format. Like the red-green or red-green X mid-range players, you know, this card doesn't have Pia's lol can't block text, but like...
Or like pump this artifact for 1 million.
Yeah, but the 2 bodies and like the ability to cash in your Moxen, your Mana Crypts, you know, even
Your artifact
Skull
lands.
Clamps, yeah, all that jazz. Like I think that does enough to convince me to play this card.
It can also sacrifice itself, so it's pretty good against removal too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. I mean, I'll give it a try for sure. We'll see who's right. Probably you, honestly.
Oh, all right.
Next up, Chef's Kiss. This is a 3-mana red instant for 1, a red, and a red. Gain control. Oh, hold on. Jer, this is a red counterspell. Jer. All right, let me read it first. Gain control of target spell that targets only a single permanent or player. Copy it, then reselect the targets at random for the spell and the copy. The new targets can't be you or a permanent that you control. Jer!
This card is sweet. I'm still undecided as to how good it is. It definitely has applications, but it's also definitely poor in some spots. For example, if your opponent casts Time Walk, which is a thing you definitely want to counter and or like redirect. This doesn't work because it can't redirect the Time Walk to you, similarly with Ancestral Recall. But if your opponent's in the business of like trying to lightning bolt you or your creatures, Chef's Kissing the lightning bolt is going to feel Chef's kiss. I couldn't not do it.
You have to do that hand gesture every time you cast it, right?
There were many hand gestures. Yeah, but this card is super, super cool and interesting. I think it's worth playing in interactive metas, at least testing it out, because the tempo swing it can provide is huge. Like that's not an uncommon thing that happens. Your opponent has a creature or 2 creatures and they try to kill your 1 creature and attack you, and you Chef's Kiss the removal spell and you kill both their creatures. That's like absurd.
It's only because it's not a 1-for-1, eh? It's the 2-for-1 that makes this card.
Well, it's more than it's like a 3-for-1 because you're stopping their spell that's worth a card and you're getting it twice.
Cool.
So it's a 3-for-1 for 3 mana, which doesn't come around super often, and it's tempo oriented. Like you typically 3-for-1s are the only 3-for-1s you're getting out of a single card are like card advantage cards. So yeah,
typically 3-for-1s, and then anything following that is a very funny sentence to hear. But it's also one where you immediately know exactly what you're talking about.
I'm talking about Ancestral Recall.
Yeah, the classic 3-for-1.
Yes, of course. I too have lost games of Canadian Highlander.
All right, next up, Dragon's Rage Channeler. For a single red pip, you get a human shaman 1/1. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, surveil 1. If you haven't heard of Surveil in a while, look at the top card of your library. You may put that card into your graveyard. And then Delirium. As long as there are 4 or more card types amongst cards in your graveyard, Dragon Rage Channeler gets +2/+2, has flying, and attacks each turn, if able. What do you think, Jer?
I actually think this card is really good. I'm normally with Ben in that Delirium cards aren't super exciting because in my experience, it's pretty hard to turn on. But with that Surveil ability, it's gonna make it much easier in that you have the choice to actively try to get Delirium. You can get it quite quickly with this ability, I think, in the right type of deck. So I think this is actually a reasonable card for... I could see playing it in mono red decks. I could see playing it in like Blitz style decks, and I could see playing it in tempo style decks as well. I think it's potentially good enough in all of those. So I'm pretty excited for this card, and I think it's a really good and cool design.
All right, next up, Flame Tongue Yearling. This is a 2-mana 2/1 Kavu for 2 red pips. Multi-kicker, 2 generic, so you may pay an additional 2 any number of times as you cast this spell. The Flame Tongue enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each time it was kicked. When it enters the battlefield, deal damage equal to its power to target creature. Wheeler.
Well, you can take those fire imps and throw them into the trash. Don't do that because, you know...
Rip Fire Imp.
Well, okay.
Because then what are you going to pod your Flame Tongue Yearling into?
Exactly. It's all about redundancy. But in the cases where it's not as much about redundancy and instead is about, you know, having
quality.
One of these cards. Yeah, exactly. Quality. Flame Tongue Yearling kind of just like, I don't know. If you told me there was like an FTK callback in this set, I would have shot so much lower than this. Like the fact that it's just a 2-mana 2/1 that when it ETBs, it domes something for 2, right? Like that's it. That's all it needs to do. And that's already just really good. I mean, you can't do it to its. I mean, okay, so it has the classic FTK formatting.
All right, so I was gonna talk about this earlier. Mm-hmm. But I love that they kept that. It obviously doesn't make the card better, but I love so much that they went back to that.
I disagree. I think it does make it better, and no further questions. Like, it's just like.
I mean, I agree with you, but
yeah. No one's going to disagree with you on this podcast.
Yeah, it's like I get very much of like a Indiana Jones kind of like we have very important people sort of on it, where it's like, don't you worry about why it can target itself. We've got this covered. It's better. Just leave it be. You don't need to know any more than that, except instead of some secret arc of like God, it's this little idiot that's spitting up magma. Anyways, that analogy made no sense, but this card's absurdly good. Like in a deck with mana dorks, much like pod decks or creature combo decks or, well, mid-range decks, red-green or red-green X. Early on, great. Later on, also great. You just get kind of everything. This card's just great.
Next up, we have Fury, which is part of this interesting cycle of incarnations. This is a 5-mana 3/3 with double strike for 3, a red and a red. When it enters the battlefield, deals 4 damage divided as you choose amongst any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers, and you can evoke it by exiling a red card from your hand. What do you think, Wheeler?
Out of all these incarnations, they're all really good. I think this one might end up just being the one that gets slept on the most. Maybe, I mean, the white one is absurdly strong, but this one also, like, there's this hidden thing of you can play this in blue X decks, right? Like, you can play this in, say, a blue moon deck, and those decks, you know, you might have an extra burst lightning or frostbite or whatever kicking around, not getting a use. Boom. Don't need to waste your mana. Nice Niv Mizzet you have in your hand, you know, taking up space. Boom. Just kill their planeswalker for free or clear up the board for free. I'm always conflicted being on the side of playing a bajillion mana dorks or getting all my mana dorks killed, but I think for this one, I'm okay with it. It's really strong. Pyrokinesis was already fine. I think this one's potentially better. You can't mystical tutor for it, which is a bit of a, like, whatever. I don't think anyone's mysticaling for Pyrokinesis anyways.
I think it's a lot better than Pyrokinesis. Just because, like, the fail case of a 3/3 with double strike, that's, like, actually a clock.
That's
like,
very good. Yeah, that's a reasonable actual thing.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's better than Pyrokinesis.
Ooh, bold statement.
Yeah,
but
strong words there, Jer.
Considering you get the 3/3 with double strike and you still get the Pyrokinesis.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I like all of those. I was trying to give context for, you know, mystical tutoring or solve the equation, a new-ish card. But ultimately, I think a 3/3 double striker is a pretty reasonable body.
Any decks you'd put this in?
Decks with red?
Yeah, most of those.
That good, eh?
Well, I don't know. It is very good. I wouldn't fault somebody for not. Well, I might fault someone for not playing this, but like it's not an every occasion card. I don't think that's at least not the vibe I'm getting, but it is a most occasion.
Yeah, like if there's a single person who may or may not sleeve up Hoof, you're probably supposed to put this in your like fair red deck.
Yeah, all right.
Just because if you draw it and they have a reasonable Hoof draw, you're probably going to win the game in which you draw it.
Mm-hmm. Or like a PZ draw in a blue-red mirror.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to Harmonic Prodigy. This is a 2-mana 1/3 human wizard for 1 and a red, has prowess, and if an ability of a shaman or another wizard you control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. Wheeler, what do you think?
I'm off the deep end, dude. I've sat and stared at this card a lot, and I've gone through like various stages of whether or not I think it's okay, whether or not I'll keep it just because it's a 2-mana 1/3 with prowess. But like now I'm at the point where like I have a blue, like a rug, like wizard / some tribal, or sorry, wizard / tiny bit of shaman pod infinite turn combo deck, because there's just like a whiteboard with a bunch of strings attached to each other, like neoform stuff with dual caster mage, all this jazz.
Is Eternal Witness a shaman, Ben?
Eternal Witness is a shaman, Jer. And
funny that.
Yeah, it's really interesting and cool and funny. And oh darn, but here's the thing: we don't have. I mean, who knows? We're only up to red, and we haven't seen any of the green cards. But maybe there's another Eternal Witness that is also a shaman.
Oh, funny.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because a lot of them are also humans too. So you can, if you use Pyre of Heroes, the tribal birthing pod from Kaldheim, you also have Divergent Paths for how you're, going up the scale. Just out of, just like Spell Seeker into, if there is a 4-mana Witness, which there isn't yet, who knows? And maybe you get into Archaeomancer, which happens to be a wizard. That's pretty good. Yeah, like this card is just also kind of redundancy because, well, I think that deck could probably function without a card like this.
Sorry, let's go back a step here. You took us down to your weird dream magical land of Rug Time Walk combo. Is this good or not?
Yes. Yeah, I think it's good. I think I don't foresee myself playing this in like a blue, is it like Blitz style deck?
So this isn't a fair card. This isn't this is a build around is what you're going for. You're not just adding it for your Snapcasters and stuff.
I think that you could probably have games with a, my Snapcaster triggered twice and my Young Pyromancer triggered twice, but usually those cards are just good Magic cards.
Yeah, they're already good by themselves. They don't need this to get better.
Right, but treating this as an unfair Magic card allows you to do something that, while it already has kind of existed in one form, this is just ultimately a much, much better form of that. Cool.
All right, let's move on. Next up, we have Mind Collapse. This is a 4-mana instant for 3 and a red. If it's your turn, you may sack a mountain rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Mind Collapse deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Hey, Jer, what do you think?
I think this card is great. And pretty much solely because they tagged on or Planeswalker. I think 4 mana and instant speed to deal 5 is not really what you're looking for, especially since it can't go upstairs. But given the fact that you can cast it for free, I think means that some amount of decks are gonna want this. It's just so good against aggressive decks when you get to like turn 3 or 4 and you get to go threat plus removal spell or double removal spell to clear the board, and you just get a bit of respite. I think, and the fact that it's not dead against the other decks because it can kill bigger things or hit planeswalkers is, I think, gonna make it good enough. Could be wrong, but I'm excited for this one.
Next up, Obsidian Charmaw. This is a 5-mana 4/4 dragon for 3 red. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each land your opponent controls that could produce colorless. Has flying, and when it enters the battlefield, destroy target non-basic land an opponent controls. Oh, are there more beautiful words in all of Magic? Anyways, Jared, what do you think?
This card's insane. It's often going to cast 4 or less. It wastelands your opponent, and it's a 4/4 flyer. Ben, I want you to answer me, just like instinctually. Is there a better dragon in the medium red mirror?
No.
Because it's gonna cost 3 and destroy their ancient tomb.
Yeah. Yes. Or yes. Yeah.
Also, with more and more utility lands having the option of like filtering or tapping for a colorless, or like doing something or tapping for a colorless, just being able to destroy those lands is nice. And the fact that it gets cost reduced for those lands as well is like, yeah, sure, why not?
So is this a meta card?
No, this card's absurd.
This card is easily. I'm very glad that I didn't exactly expect otherwise, but I thought I was having some kind of like nightmare when I initially talked about how this card is like one of the most messed up cards. Will end up being one of the most impactful cards from this set for our format, which is a huge statement.
Yeah. You're like 5-mana dragon. You're like, yeah.
It's just like, it's not as flashy as some of the other ones. Doesn't have like a super direct callback that everyone's going to recognize. But they'll start recognizing this card when it gets dropped doesn't even have to be that early or at all. Like even at 5 mana through acceleration, this is messed up.
Yeah, like it's going in every red-green aggro deck because it's going to cost 4 enough. It's going in the bigger red-green decks. It's going in every red deck that plays dragons. You could even play this in like blue moon, and it's not going to be ridiculous as a finisher because it can deal with lands, which are problematic. It's not ridiculous to play in any mid-range deck like Jund or Grixis or anything that can cast double red. Like, yeah, it's
so good. It's so good.
People have wanted to point Wasteland for so long, and this is Wasteland tapped to a 4/4 flyer that gets cost reduced.
Yep. I remember Wasteland was pointed, wasn't it, for a while?
Yeah.
All right, let's move on, and I'm going to do my absolute best to pronounce this card because Shiva made a video of it. Ragavan, the Nimble Pilferer. I think I nailed that.
Ragavan?
It's not Ragavan,
No.
Ragavan.
Please ignore my ears on this one, but as long as you're not calling it Ragavan, you're going to
probably fine. All right,
you're doing a hell of a lot better.
Anyways, the legendary monkey pirate is a 2/1 for a single red pip. When it deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token and exile the top card of that player's library. Until end of turn, you may cast that card, and it dashes for 1 in red.
I'm crying.
God.
Wheeler, what do you think?
I've told this anecdote several times, I think, but mostly internally, where, spoiler alert, but not actually, I opened this card in my PPR kit, and I originally read it. When I saw it, I read it as a 1/1 because and I love Ragavan. It's the card, the token is a joke in YJ, right? Like it's just like the fake card that people mention is like Ragavan's Fury or whatever. It's some Robin Sorensen joke of like, I top deck this and cast it. And like I know it's a 2/1. I know it's a 2/1. I've attacked with the Karizev a couple of times, but I don't think my brain allowed me to be like, no, this card, that card, why would this be a 2/1? That's too good. There's no way. This is a 1-mana 1/1. This card's absurd. Yeah, it's absurd.
So, new auto include in RDW?
And many other decks. This is the type of card where if you play it on turn 1 on the play, and your opponent doesn't have a turn 1 removal spell, they probably just lose.
That's strong.
This is the kind of card that makes me think back to every time someone's like, hey, Ben, are temples okay in Canlander? And I've gone like, well, maybe like the blue-black one or the blue-white. Sure. And then all of a sudden, like this monkey just lands and starts giggling at me like,
too bad your land's tapped, idiot. You're like, no!
That was your turn 1 play? Ha, 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 ha. And I'm just dead. Just dead. And like dash on this card is absurd. Like dash is so good. Not enough red. Like that's such a big showcase of like the people that have been playing red in this format for over a decade to the people that have like picked it up recently. It's just how much they dash their Zergo because you can't kill it. You feel like Sylvester the cat trying to catch Tweety Bird. You just won't actually get it. If they keep dashing. And it's this card just does so much. It's so good. Oh my God.
Just the play patterns that can emerge when you play this card on turn 1 is just so disgusting.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's talk about our final red card today, the Viashino Lashclaw. This is a 2-mana 2/2 Viashino warrior for 1 in a red, and has an ability tap and discard a card. Creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. Wheeler, take us home.
Okay, well, this is a shout out to all those diehards that play like Rakdos or Jund Madness. And I mean, that was a deck that has X1'd at Yellow Jacket Comics and Toys several times. A Wild Mongrel, hell of a magic card. Having Lightning Bolt and Thoughtseize also helps. But a discard outlet like this that just gives haste is scary, right? Like Anger, the 4-mana incarnation from Judgment, which I believe is in this set as well, although I could be wrong. It's pretty good. So like, giving your Hogak haste, giving your, Vengevine already has haste, but giving your gigantic, your hollow one haste, pretty scary, pretty scary. And it's all on a bear. Like, a bear's not nothing. This card can at least navigate somewhat fairly and still be a real pain in the ass. So I don't think this is, the flashiest card from Modern Horizons 2. I feel pretty confident making that statement. But I do think that it is a nice little role player that'll show up and do 2 different things that the decks that want these effects are always glad to have more of.
All right, next up we have Abundant Harvest, which I believe is a reprint, ?
Well, it's a reprint from the Mystical Archive from Strixhaven.
So for those of you not familiar, for a single green, you get a sorcery that says choose land or non-land. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a card of the chosen kind. Put that one into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. What do you think, Jer?
This card is really good. There are many situations when you cast, especially early on, a cantripping card and you're looking for a specific thing. You're like, my hand needs a little bit more action, or like I need that second or third land. And this card does that. It's kind of a throwback to the card Enchantment Abundance that lets you do that for each card you draw. But having access to this as a 1-mana sorcery is great, and this card is great, and it will see tons and tons of play in the format.
What deck would take this over like a blue cantrip?
Well, you're likely not putting it over a blue cantrip unless you're cutting like Portent or like a 2-mana one. But like Brainstorm Ponder and Preordain are all better. But like you could play this over Opt reasonably if you're not like super instant speed. You could play this over like some of the worst 1-mana cantrips. Definitely play it over any of the 2-mana cantrips. So like I'd play it in blue-green decks, like blue-green Time Walks would play it. Blue-green Tempo would play it, I'd imagine. Rug Tempo would play it.
Yeah, I think if you're a blue-green deck or like, I don't know, like a Jund Pyromancer deck, if you're a deck with green in it that cares about spells, which is usually blue-green, you are going to snap play this card. It's pretty good. It's a pretty reasonable card. You kind of pick what you want to hit and you hit it, and that's great.
Yeah, there's not really a fail case, which is nice.
All right, let's move on to Blessed Respite. This is a 2-mana instant for 1 and a green. Target player shuffles their graveyard into their library, and then prevent all combat damage to be dealt this turn. A nice little fog. What do you think, Jer?
This card's interesting, but I think it's only like half a fog. Like people are gonna glaze over that first text, and that's the reason you get to play the card, is that it also like counters graveyard shenanigans. Like it counters the card Reanimate. It counters Snapcaster Mage. It counters half of Gearhulk. Like, and the fact that it becomes much more applicable. Like it's probably the best fog they printed in a very long time, which is kind of exciting. Fogs don't typically see play. Like you might see a Moment's Peace that I claim as Time Stretch, or somebody or Serge might be like trying to lock you out with Constant Mists or something.
Yeah.
But you don't see like fogs played. But I think playing this one is not outside the realm of possibility and could be a reasonable choice in some situations.
Are you looking at it more like a modal card than one card that does two things?
Yeah, definitely.
Because I don't see much of a world in which you get to both exile their graveyard and fog, right?
Yeah, it's a modal card for the most part, I think.
Neat. Very neat. All right, let's move on to our next elemental incarnation. This is the green one, Endurance. So 3 mana 3/4 for 1 green with flash and reach. And when it enters the battlefield, up to 1 target player puts all the cards from their graveyard onto the bottom of their library in a random order. Evoke, exile a green card from your hand. What do you think, Wheeler?
I think that this card is pretty all right. I think that ability is a lot better than most people give it credit for. But my favorite part about this is that I say favorite, but I tend to be on the other side of this, is that it just doesn't care about Vendilion cliques.
Yeah, I was going to say, this blocks Clique and all of the 3/1s in blue very well.
Blocks Lightning Angel, Resto Angel.
I think this is going to see a lot of play just because it has flash. Like,
yeah,
so many green creature decks just want more reasonable flash creatures. Like the amount of times I've sleeved up Wolfear Avenger just because it's a donkey that has flash.
Yeah, you get people. That card kills people.
Yeah, and this card, trust me, this card is better than Wolfear Avenger. I'll stake my reputation on it.
All right. That's recorded. You're going to regret saying that in a couple of years.
Somebody's going to get you. Oh, Chair. Yeah.
There's going to be Return to Innistrad. Yeah. Oof. But anyhow, this card is I think very good, just because a 3/4 flash creature with reach is very strong, and the ability, as Ben said, is going to be underrated most of the time. Like even if you're not getting any like technical value out of it, even just slowing them down off delve spells or limiting their options with a Snapcaster Mage further down the line like can matter, even though those things often go unnoticed even by people analyzing the game. So
heck yeah. All right, let's go for probably one of the more exciting new cards in the set. This one certainly generated a buzz. It's the Ignoble Hierarch. Single green pip gets you a 0/1 Goblin Shaman with Exalted, and tap it to add black, red, or green. Wheeler.
This is just a game changer, right? Like this is just the word I've been using is like impactful. Like this card out of any other card is going to be the most even more than like the force of creatures, right? I think is that like every green deck is going to play this. Every green deck that it plays mana acceleration is playing this.
Yeah.
And then it also just has enough going for it that kind of Noble gets away with, where you have green decks that will, or green X decks rather, that will play only a couple of mana accelerants, but those accelerants are Birds of Paradise, Deathrite Shaman, and then Noble Hierarch, and maybe like a Lotus Cobra or Paradise Druid or whatever. But like the fact that this can cast Hymn to Torak, the fact that this can play a Liliana on turn 2, like any of the lilies, that it accelerates you into like Domries or whatever. Like, my God. I mean, it's Ignoble Hierarch in Jund colors with a relevant creature type. Like, this is...
Oh, it's also a goblin. God.
Yeah, it's a goblin. It's so funny. Yeah.
Oh, that just clicked.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that just clicked.
Yeah, it's
Why is it a goblin?
would you, I mean, thank God it's not, well, I guess it wouldn't be an elf, but you know what I mean. It's pretty good, huh? It's not bad.
Above average.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
All right. I'm sure every mana dork in this set is going to be equally good, right? Let's talk about Rift Sower. 3 mana, 1/3 elf druid for 2 and a green. Okay. Tap to add 1 mana of any color. Sure. Suspend 2 for a green. All right. Feels a little underwhelming after the Ignoble Hierarch. Jared, what do you think?
Goes in druids. That's all I have to say.
Is any other green deck going to want to play this as an accelerant?
No.
Elves.
Oh yeah, sure. You can play it in elves as well.
It has haste, dude.
That's true. But it only has 1 power.
Oh yeah, you're right. I just had a really bad thought for like some weird like blue-green opposition win con where you suspend it, take an extra turn, and then it's just like your haste creature and you get to just punch face with this turbo druid.
We can do better. We have the technology.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Quarantine's ruined me.
All right. So next up we have Sanctum Weaver, and this card is very exciting. This is a 2 mana 0/2 enchantment dryad for 1 and a green. Tap, add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of enchantments you control, and I'm going to throw this one to myself. So Modern Horizons 2 has enchantments matters back. It has Enchantress back, and that makes me very excited because I love Enchantress. But the problem I have is that deck isn't very good. And while it's getting better, I'm not quite sure if it's good enough yet. And the main problem Enchantress has is you play very, very, very few creatures. So any removal spell that your opponent has in hand immediately takes out all of your high-value creatures. And you need all of your high-value creatures, so you're not just playing dirtily do-nothing enchantments. Like, you need an engine. You need to start to do something. And the best enchantresses are probably the ones that you can't kill. Argothian Enchantress, for example, having Shroud. And which is the enchantress that's actually an enchantment?
Enchantress's Presence.
Enchantress's Presence is another great example. That being said, when they do print more enchantresses, it does give you enough of them that the deck will naturally get better. So am I excited about this card? Yes. Am I going to play this card? Yes. Am I excited about the fact that this card taps for more than just white? Absolutely. Is Enchantress good? I don't know. Leaning towards I don't think so. Anyone else want to add anything onto that one?
I mean, do you want my joke or do you want the real thing?
Give me both.
Okay, the joke was I really wish you would practice what you're preaching though.
Hey, I don't say don't play good decks. I'm still going to play it, right?
Okay,
Like,
I know, but you're like, Enchantress, you need to not play do nothing enchantments.
Oh.
And I've been on the other side of the table of your do nothing enchantments.
The amount of times I've seen you cast Mana Bloom for 0.
Mana Bloom is the heart of that deck. How dare you? Draw a card. It's 1 mana, draw a card.
Oh no, he's getting mad.
And you get to do it every turn.
Oh my God, he's hulking out.
What's your real answer?
My real answer is that I think I do agree with you. I think that Enchantress, in order for it to thrive in our format, it needs a little more oomph, right?
Yeah.
You need some kind of push. A local player was playing a version that almost had like a land sub theme to it, which I think was super smart. Like, and it was, and he was putting up results, right? He was getting to the finals. He was killing people, and that's. I think one of the reasons is because you can have that. I mean, not that just that's a good package, but also Enchantress doesn't really have like, there's like, what do you use for your points, right? Like, it always feels weird because you're like, I'm an enchantment deck. Anyways, Mox Emerald, Mox.
Yeah, I often feel like I'm honor bound to not play Moxen, but you're like, it lets you cast your enchantments faster, Jaeger. Like, all right.
All right, well, I drive tough bargain, me. Yeah, it's, so what am I getting at? The lands package it fits in well because you're already going to be playing those cards to find your Sarah Sanctum or to find your Hall of Heliod's Generosity, the symbol of his church. And so you want those cards to be able to find that, but you also want, you play some regrowth kind of effects.
Well, replenish and lands work great together. You're pretty happy to mill off of Life from the Loam, fill up your graveyard with enchantments, and then regrowth, or not regrowth, Replenish?
Yeah, replenish.
And I'd be like, GG.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good. So what I think Enchantress needs to do for our format is I think that it needs to kind of, play in a bit for the land thing. And why I'm mentioning it is because this being a cheap green creature also just fits in extremely well to that family of cards. You can find this off your Green Sun Zenith, which you're already playing, your Finale of Devastation. It's cheap enough to get off Eladamri's Call or get out with a very cheap Wargate. And so having that flexibility of all these kind of cards that you will play and get more value out of, because you can also find your Ramanap Excavators, your Titanias, that kind of thing, you can just kind of poop out an enchantment. So it turns all of your, you already had it with Courser of Krufix, and you might even get a little extra juice later on.
What do you think about this in Sanctum Stompy?
I think you kind of have to play it in Sanctum Stompy. Yeah, you're that's a deck that will take whatever it can get, and this happens to be an enchantment creature that's 2 mana or less, and so that's good enough for them, especially because it accelerates.
Well, I got some brewing to do. I've got apparently like 3 different Enchantress and Lands decks I need to make now. Thanks, bud.
Yeah, no worries, anytime.
All right, next up, Sylvan Anthem. Green enchantment. Green creatures you control get +1/+1, and whenever a green creature you control enters the battlefield, scry. What do you think, Wheeler?
I hate Anthem cards like this in any deck that isn't mono white. And
why does only mono white get anthems?
Because if I'm playing a mono white deck that wants to play Honor the Pure, like my creatures are just absolute garbage. Like they're so bad, and I know they're bad.
Because green has good creatures, it doesn't get anthems?
Well, they don't need them. Like, what do you nice anthem?
Their creatures already have +1/+1 built in from design.
Yeah. Oh gosh, darn it! I guess this anthem really made your Yorvo take off.
My Thragtusk is a 6/4. Cool. All right.
Good. Now my Steel Leaf Champion's a 3 mana 6/5.
Nice. Like that extra, and it's like, well, what about elves? It's like, okay. You got planeswalkers that also make your stuff deadly. Like green already has the tools to make this bigger, to make your things bigger, and often cards like this, you're just better off playing another creature, right? More so than other decks, because your creatures are gigantic. Often they're hard to kill, but you just want another creature so that you can keep playing your creatures, because if you draw a bunch of stuff that aren't creatures that make your creatures bigger, but you have no creatures, then what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right? What are you doing?
Why are you playing green? No, that's
so
fair.
I don't think this is necessary. And even if you're dipping into elf aggro or elf tribal kill them dead kind of decks, your elves already do that for you. They have, anthem effects stapled to something that also is just Priest of Titania, right? So it's a little unnecessary, I think, for most green decks in our format.
Right on. All right, next up we have Thrasta. Tempest's Roar is a 12 mana 7/7 legendary dinosaur. This spell costs 3 less to cast for each other spell cast this turn. Has trample and haste, and trample over planeswalkers, which is new and exciting, and it works exactly the way you think it does. How cool is that?
Very.
And finally, it has hexproof as long as it entered the battlefield this turn. Jer, what do you think?
I feel like I'm supposed to hate this card, but I feel like they've done enough things to sort of appease me as a control mage who's going to die to this enough that I can be okay with it. It costs $1 million. They probably have to double spell to cast it. Crushes planeswalkers, which just even though my planeswalkers are the ones going to be crushed, I just have to love it. And it only has hexproof for the turn, and it can be countered. So I feel like this is just clean, good, clean, fair magic. If you're killing people with this, good for you. And I don't actually think it's very good. I think the cost reduction isn't going to do quite enough often enough to make it actually castable. I think realistically you need 3 spells to be cast to reliably cast it. Casting it for 6 isn't that exciting. There's better things you can be doing. So unless you're casting it for 3, it's not that good. So if you're playing some illusory angel deck where you're trying to cast a bunch of free spells, then yeah.
Isn't there a magical Christmas land where you can have this on turn 2 though, if you hold your Mox in or whatever?
You can turn 1 this pretty easily. It's not that hard. If one of your spells is Black Lotus, then you don't really need to have much imagination past that. But
yeah, right. Black Lotus is worth 6 if you're trying to catch Thrasta.
Yeah, not that hard, but I just think there's a couple too many hoops and it doesn't, the payoff isn't quite good enough. But
Cool. All right. Next up, Timeless Witness. Oh my goodness. What a great callback name. Is a 4-mana 2/1 human shaman for 2 green. When it enters the battlefield, return target card from your graveyard to your hand. And then it has Eternalize for 5 green, which means exile this card from your graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 4/4 black zombie human shaman with no mana cost, and Eternalize only as a sorcery. What do you think, Wheeler?
They did it. They finally did it. Witness was one of those cards where it came out, everyone's like, oh, okay, this card's very good and we'll see play for the rest of, forever. It'd be nice if they made a worse 4-drop version of it. And then we never got it. And it's like, okay, well, how about a 5-drop? And we never got it. And then they gave us a 6-drop that is just a big donkey that won't see play in Green Warden or Marasa or whatever. And then finally they listened to us and said, okay, here you go. It's Eternal Witness, but 4 mana. And we would have kept it at that. We would mean, thank you for everything. Glad to have it. Great art. But then they also slapped Eternalize, which means you can't counter this, Serge. You can't counter this.
Why are you pointing that out to me specifically? Hold on.
No, I'm not pointing it out to you as much as it's just Serge.
I can read the card. Yeah.
It can't be countered.
Holy moly. I didn't see that coming. My goodness.
Because if I said it to Jer, it would feel like an attack, right? Where it's like, hey, Jer, nice force will. Eternalize. It's
all right.
Yeah. So this is
poor Jer.
Yeah, this card's absurd. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's like it's just another redundant copy of Witness, which is great.
at a good mana cost.
Yeah. Like it's totally fine to cast and play. It still hits all the nice little loop requirements of your Revel Arcs, your Recruit of the Guards, your Imperial Recruiters. It's honestly at 4 is huge for pod chaining because you can now when this card got oh my god, one of my favorite Spellseeker Time Walk versions, decks that look to take extra turns repeatedly, of course, using Ephemerate. Before we got to the Ephemerate tech was just the Sultai version where you kind of did that, but you just took infinite turns through somewhat dubious means. Like Marin of Clan Neltoth was involved. You would have Sakashima the Imposter, all this jazz, and it would get the job done. And sometimes you would get up to a part where part of your loop required you to use a seven mana's worth of regrowth effects basically to take that extra turn.
And now you got that just in your Eternalize, baby.
Well, now that, yeah, and honestly, that's a huge bonus because that's a deck that can take advantage of the more graveyard-based interactions, and boom, you've got this.
Answer from your deck.
Exactly. You can, oh my god.
You don't have to play actual draft trash in Highlander.
And it's 4. You can neoform right into this. Holy smokes. And of course, it's a shaman as per the Harmonic Prodigy discussion. Yeah, this card's absolute slam dunk. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10.
All right. Next up, Tireless Provisioner. This is a 3-mana 3/2 Elf Scout for 2 and a green. Has landfall. Hello. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a food token or a treasure token. And I will throw this to me. I don't know.
This card's insane. This card's absurd.
Jer, you go. Hey, Jer, how do you think about Tireless Provisioner?
This card's absurd.
Why?
Have you heard of a card called Fast Bond?
Tell me more.
So say you were to play three lands with Fast Bond, and you were to make 2 treasures and a food token.
Oh.
Then you can sacrifice your food token using the 2 treasures, and you've essentially played 3 lands for no cost. Now say you had anything else that did anything when a land entered play. Literally anything.
This card's insane.
Yeah, that's I was about to give
it
Serge
goes infinite with Fast Bond.
Yeah. Oh, what? Yeah, dude.
And that's that's base scenario. It's also just really, really good. It also just ramps you, means red has to kill this or never even have a sniff of winning the game ever.
My God. My pitch was, what if Lotus Cobra didn't mana burn you?
Well, it's a 3-drop. It's a 3-mana 3/2. It does. I mean, if you compare if your starting point is Tireless Tracker,
this is better.
Yeah.
This is better.
I mean, it is. I do think it is a better Magic card in the grand scheme of things, but I think it's different.
It's very different,
but also better.
Yeah. because if you have Fast Bond in play, your chances of winning just went like through the roof.
It goes infinite with Fast
Like
Bond.
Tireless Tracker is a better grindy fair card, whereas this is like still a fine grindy fair card, but it also has so much combo potential. Oh, so much combo potential.
Let's analyze it outside of combo, because I can see the combo potential. Are mid-range decks playing this?
No, probably not.
Sorry, what do you mean?
Are mid-range decks cut it like...
No, before that. What do you mean analyze it outside of combo?
Well, sometimes it's important to take a look at a card through different lenses, and we've established that this is totally busted left and right in a Fast Bond
Like
deck.
if you're a lands mid-range deck, you're playing it.
Yeah, elves. I like it in elves, just elves proper. I think I'm likely, I mean, would you do me a favor and let me talk about it in the fair sense of a creature combo deck? I like it in a fair sense in a creature combo deck because those decks are usually 3 or more colors, and sometimes you are going to have to, set up your mana to be a little awkward. Like, it'll be the correct thing to do, but you might also find yourself being like, oh, I am now missing double black, or I didn't account for triple white on my next turn. And so a card like this ends up just kind of having that, if you want the treasure tokens, which you often do, great. My pips are free. I'm able to, better sculpt my mana and also account for weirdo situations where I might need quad white.
Yeah, no, you've completely opened my eyes on this whole card right now. Yeah, the mana fixing. Thinking of this as a Lotus Cobra, except you can save the landfall trigger for the turn you need it, is absurd.
Yeah, also just like attacking for 3. 3 is a lot.
Also, people don't realize how good treasure tokens are. They're lotus petals. Like, people choose to put the card in their deck and draw it.
I don't know why. Just the way this card was templated, food or treasure token, and you're right.
And if I may, about food tokens, similar point. 3 life is so much life.
Yeah, it negates a lightning bolt, right?
If you've ever fought against like a creature deck with Gilded Goose and you're an aggressive deck and they like Gilded Goose ephemerate it or reanimate it, and then they just get 6 life. They could just gain 6 life and still like, Thoughtseize. Well, not Thoughtseize, but you know what? They can still 6 life plus kill your thing, and you're just like, oh, that's like a turn and a half of attacks gone. And they weren't doing anything anyways.
All right, never mind. This card's unbelievable and busted left and right. So thank you for opening my eyes to it. I can't believe, I definitely think I was just sleeping on food and treasure tokens, which is why I looked at this and I kind of made it
You're not
sound.
alone. A lot of people I've talked to were like ho-hum about this card until I did the exact same thing. And I'm like, can I interest you in a card called Fast Bond?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then they're like, oh.
Yeah. Let's take it home. The last card we're going to talk about today is Verdant Command. This is a 2-mana instant for 1 and a green. Choose 2. Target player creates 2 tapped 1/1 squirrel tokens. Counter target loyalty ability of a planeswalker. Exile target card from a graveyard. Or target player gains 3 life. Jer.
So at first I didn't like this card because I was like, oh, none of those modes are very exciting. Then I'm like, oh, there's a lot of versatility. It only costs 2 and it's an instant. And the first mode is actually pretty good. So I think as a base of create 2 tapped 1/1 tokens and gain 3. This card is fine in some decks, but given the versatility of the other 2 modes, like anytime you get to make 2 1/1s and counter planeswalker ability or exile target card from a graveyard, I think it's going to be like close to insane. So I think this card is actually pretty good, and I'd want to play it in certain things some of the time.
Just so disappointed that the creatures enter tapped. I wonder why they thought that was too good.
I actually think it's power level.
Yeah, if you're able to generate 2 bodies and gain 3 life, like just as your baseline, and those bodies are able to block like multiple things as well, like that's, oh my god.
This card's like 2 mana, gain 9.
Yeah. Oh.
Okay, that makes sense. Cool. Well, that is going to do it for our set review today. Thank you very much. Make sure you listen up for the next episode where we cover the remainders of the set. As always, if you think we missed any cards, let us know in the comments down below. Reminder, this podcast is brought to you by you. You support at their Patreon over at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Thank you oh so much for listening, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.